28 years. That's how long it's been since the very first Resident Evil game. In between then and now, we've received 7 more mainline games, all with their own spin on the classic survival horror franchise. Each game typically has their own unique pool of enemies to choose from in its efforts of providing challenge and scares to make your skin crawl. I'd personally even say it's one of the series' biggest strong suits. We of course have the typical zombies, but Resident Evil really stretches its concept to give us some memorable ideas. The Lickers, Regenerators, and Crimson Heads are only 3 examples of the many creatures that Resident Evil has to offer. With that being said, we won't be discussing any of those enemies in this video. In fact, the enemy type that I have in mind far outstrips any other enemy in the Resident Evil franchise. The enemy type that I will be analyzing is referred to as the Stalker Enemy. These enemies made their initial debut in the original Resident Evil 3 back in 1999. Since then, they have garnered much praise in the games they are featured in and have been put to use countless times throughout the series. In my personal opinion, this is easily the scariest type of threat that we see in Resident Evil, and honestly one of the scariest I've ever had to deal with in all of gaming. In this video, I'll be exploring the ins and outs of the Stalker Enemy's core concept. In order to paint a vivid picture, I'll also be discussing 2 of the series' key examples of a Stalker Enemy in the Resident Evil games. By the end of this video, you could fully understand what makes a great Stalker Enemy. And hey, if this does well enough, maybe I'll make a part 2 covering some of the other various Stalker Enemy rogues gallery that Resident Evil has built up. So strap in, and let's talk about Resident Evil's greatest enemy archetype. Before we can even scratch the surface of Resident Evil's instances of Stalker enemies, it's imperative that you understand the science and core concept of a Stalker enemy. If I were to put into words a short but accurate definition of the enemy, I would put it like this. Stalker Enemy, a persistent, threatening enemy who appears and follows you throughout an area to add stress. With this vague statement in mind, let me expand on it a little more and its effectiveness. When exploring and unlocking an area within a survival horror game, a Stalker Enemy has the core purpose of relentlessly hunting you down. No matter where in the location you are, it will be chasing you. The only usual exception to this rule is safe rooms. Other than that, nowhere can you hide from them. Why is this? The main effectiveness of their design choice is to constantly put pressure and paranoia on the player. Let's say, for instance, you're looking for a key item in a very cramped space in order to progress. You can't for the life of you spot the item, and you're desperately trying to find it fast. Amidst your search, you see the Stalker Enemy on the other side of the room walk in. You now have a pressure to frantically search even faster in efforts of having little interaction with this beast that hunts you. The distance closes, and in order to find what you're looking for and survive, you must now navigate this small room and pray that you locate the key item before too drastic of damage is done. The Stalker Enemy may be a general and simple concept for survival horror games, but it can have effective results in small and large situations. This hypothetical that I've described to you has happened countless times in my multiple Resident Evil playthroughs. Even when watching other streamers play the game, I can see this exact thing happen to them as well. What emotion do they display? Paranoia. I'll state it again, these enemies are practically crafted specifically for the paranoia factor of what will happen when they catch up to you. Similar to the scenario I described, Stalker enemies oftentimes will interfere with different aspects of the game for the better. To give another hypothetical, instead of looking for an item, you are navigating a hallway filled with zombies. They're blocking the way to progression, but you can maneuver them by using their slow lunging behavior and your movement speed to your advantage. Could be better, but it's an easily manageable situation. But then, you hear the Stalker Enemy approaching from behind you. Just the sound of it drawing near is enough to give you 1,000 ideas of how to proceed. Instead of your original plan, you drop it and use your precious offensive resources to kill the zombies in the clearing. Anything goes in your head as long as you can escape the threat that's chasing you. That brings up another key element of Stalker Enemies in relation to the player. Something about a persistent threat does something to the player that causes them to make decisions that they would otherwise not do. More specifically, your resource management. Most recurring survival horror players tend to want to conserve their resources as long as they can for a more difficult section of the game. Ammo, grenades, flashbangs, you name it. If it has an offensive advantage, then it's best to conserve. That's just basic survival horror philosophy. The Stalker Enemy disrupts this core feature of survival horror mechanics by constantly charging at the player. which makes them waste resources to enlarge that gap between them and the enemy. The fear of the Stalker enemy catching up and having the ability to do damage flips a switch in the player's mind that they must get away from it, no matter the cost. It's almost the perfect concept for a survival horror enemy. One that directly messes with your resource managing tendencies is the ideal anti to the idea of survival horror itself. These enemies work just as well with the other aspect of survival horror: exploration. In survival horror games, you must slowly unlock an area by exploring accessible rooms, finding key items, and using said items to open up the area more. A good comparison to this style of exploration that I've heard used before is to a puzzle box. You must unlock the same area from inside out in order to progress and complete the game. If you're being chased by the Stalker enemy whilst exploring a new area, there's a great chance that you put yourself in a dead end where there's no viable escape route. Something as simple as a locked door could be your downfall when being pursued by a Stalker enemy. It's happened to me more times than I care to admit. Most players that I've watched approach this issue by using their immunity in the save rooms to plan ahead on the best approach to arriving at a location, whilst avoiding the Stalker enemy. Pulling out your map and working through what approach would be the easiest or least threatening is essential in avoiding a Stalker enemy successfully. Adding even more strategic elements to the game through this enemy type really enriches the gameplay experience. To wrap everything up in a little bow, Stalker enemies challenge or contest nearly every aspect of survival horror gameplay to embed terror in your exploration. It takes strategy, reflexes, resource management skills, and just a tad bit of luck to be able to properly deal with these enemies. Even if you can manage to escape them, you'll always know that they'll be back, and that almost nowhere you are safe from them. So, now that I've explained what makes this concept tick, you should have the skills to pick apart what a good Stalker enemy looks like. Don't worry, this will be on the quiz. I'll now be going through our examples for the day and presenting their effectiveness. And I know just the perfect enemy to start off with. While the character initially debuted in the 1998 classic Resident Evil 2, the version that we'll be discussing in this video will be from the Resident Evil 2 remake, released in 2019. Mr. X in 2019's Resident Evil 2 is the gold standard of what an effective Stalker enemy should look like. Everything I've described in the previous section, Mr. X does phenomenally. I could just ramble about Mr. X, but I prefer to organize my thoughts, so I'll go down my internal list of talking points. Before we get into the nitty-gritty of survival horror mechanics, I want to briefly discuss his character design. Whenever you have an effective Stalker enemy, the ultimate cherry on top is giving the character an imposing design. The job of a Stalker enemy is to make you feel pressured and scared. I mean, it's literally in the name of the genre. The tall, stocky nature of Mr. X plays perfectly into that pressurized feeling. He is a large skyscraper of a creature that shrouds himself in a trench coat and hat. The only bit of his skin that you see is just a face that looks like it is stone carved. I'm convinced the word imposing was invented just for this guy right here. His whole appearance encapsulates what a Stalker enemy is. Not only that, but the design fits with the environment he's used with. In Resident Evil 2's police station, it's constantly pitch black with only your flashlight illuminating it. The hallways themselves are intentionally cramped and not that large in size. Mr. X manages to play to the element of darkness and to the element of limited space in the police department. If I were to give it a point rating on a Stalker enemy design, then it'd easily be 8 liquors out of 10 in my book. His mechanical function and actual application to the game is simple yet game-changing. Resident Evil 2 will let you play with the game Stalker-free for a good duration of its starting runtime. I can't give you a proper estimate of how long this period is, but in my Resident Evil 2 streams, it took about 2 hours to encounter him. It allows you to build familiarity with your location you'll be exploring for the rest of the game, as well as learning resource management. After you obtain the club key, Mr. X will appear and begin to stalk you. After this point, he'll be right behind you at almost all times. Here's how he functions. Before Mr. X spots you, he's in a free roam kind of state where he'll just blindly search the premises of the RPD. Once he hears you or is just close enough to you, he'll begin to power strut towards your location. Before you can even see him, his thunderous footsteps can be heard growing louder and louder, serving as a sort of warning audio cue that he draws near. It's such a small detail, but it goes a long way. Hearing these footsteps is enough to send a shiver down my spine. Especially when you're in a cramped space, you come to absolutely dread hearing those footsteps. Whenever he actually catches up to you, he only has one action he can perform: Haymaker Punch. It might seem pretty basic, but him hitting you will knock you down to the floor, leaving you in an uncomfortable position. He'll continue to repeat this process until you've died by his hand. Or, another zombie's hand, I guess. While his individual hits don't do that much damage compared to the other threats of the game, he's far from sluggish when he's chasing you, and he's one of the lucky few enemies that can actually keep up with your walking speed. Remember, he's no zombie, so he can chase you more effectively. And while his attacks aren't that special, being hit by one can result in you being left in a vulnerable position to the other zombies along your area. If I were to sum up Mr. X in a short sentence, I would choose the phrase, simple but effective. He applies the fundamental aspects of a Stalker enemy and uses them to his advantage. In terms of examples given, Mr. X is the most clear-cut choice I could give. Well, we've reached the end. Hopefully I was able to convey to you the fundamentals of a great Stalker enemy. A constant threat in a horror game is something I'm very fascinated about in terms of its design and application, and I'm very grateful to be sharing my interest with you. As I stated in the very beginning of the video, if the people watching this enjoyed the video, then maybe I'll make some follow-ups going through Resident Evil's other Stalker enemies. We still have a lot more that I haven't touched on, so there's no shortage of material there. Or as an alternative option, I could always talk about other survival horror games as a way for people to gain more understanding of the subgenre. Feel free to let me know what you thought in the comments, as it helps me to improve the videos and know what else to work on. Well, that's all from me. Until next time, cheers!